Hi, everyone. This is Hal Krosman with Screenwriting U, and today we're going to talk about how to write and pitch your great horror movie. And let me say a couple of things about horror here before we jump into this. Before I started working with horror producers, I actually thought horror was one of those things that was like easy, lower level, not as well written as other genres, all that other kind of thing. And I ended up working with a bunch of horror producers, but one of them was Sean Cunningham, who was the producer of Friday the 13th and continues to own the rights to Friday the 13th, all of those sequels that they did. And that completely opened up my eyes. It's like, oh my God, when you look at the quality of the writing that actually is in horror, when it's done well, it's incredible. Now, on the other side, let me tell you, there are tens of thousands of people out there that are writing absolutely average, bland horror. So tonight's meeting is a chance to take a look at, what really can be done in this particular genre. So let's jump into it here. We're going to look at A Quiet Place, one scene. This scene fits our scary as hell horror scenes model. And that's one of the ones we developed that it's like you could take almost any scene that you want and make it truly scary as hell. Now, this one, you know the movie, A Quiet Place. You had a chance to look at the scene. It's incredibly well written. The movie, the credits went to Brian Woods and Scott Beck, but I'll tell you, John Krasinski worked on this script, and uh, and Emily Blunt especially had input into the scene that you just saw. So this movie budget was 17 million, the box office 341. That's what's possible when you write something that fits our model. It is incredible what you can do. So just give yourself the freedom tonight to be able to look beyond what you already know, to see what actually was done, what made this particular scene and this movie so successful. And I'll show you what it did for their careers as writers. So first thing, understanding what sells horror movies. Basically, in general, they're low budget. This one wasn't quite as low budget as the others. Most of them are 1 to 5 million. However, there are, in this case, it was 17 million. I think there's been some horror movies that have been even higher than that. Don't worry about the budget. If you're saying, well, I don't want to write something low budget, uh, in this genre, writing something low budget means producers are looking at it and saying, "Oh my God, it I'm going to take a low risk for the possibility of an incredibly high paying opportunity, which means you are incredibly valuable to them at this budget level." So just be considering it. There's tremendous upside potential. Breakouts end up making 10 times the money or more. We saw on this one, it's like, I think it made a little more than 20 times. Uh, yeah. So that it's, and there's some that have made up to 100 times the money that was put up in the very beginning. And each one of them started an incredible career for the writer. I'll show you that in a couple minutes. They're also high concept, a single line pitch that focuses on the big hook of the movie. If you can create something that is truly high concept and is great horror, you've got a really good chance of selling and then creating a career. Uh, you bring in some kind of unique horror. The characters are terrorized in a new way. It's easy. Again, I've seen so many bad low budget indie movies where they just did the same stuff we've always seen. And by the way, most of them weren't well written. They were done by directors who went, oh, I can just kind of put these scenes together on the fly. And they didn't know that great horror comes from great writing. That's you. So, and then you need some kind of unique monster, that delivers a new spin on a primal fear. And that's what this one did. So, A Quiet Place, just a couple of things. First, the high concept. This is the very first scene. I had to really work to be able to get one where you could see the monster. I don't know if you remember, but the way this movie was done, the very first scene, you see the kid standing there, he makes noise, they're at the bridge, and all of a sudden you hear this noise, this, rustling through the woods, and then boom, the kid's gone. And you can tell, yes, something came across it, but you didn't really see it. And that's another part of the horror model. When do you show how much of the monster? So here, the high concept. If the monster hears you, it kills you, right? That was their tagline. And then the real question is, how can you have a family and the birth of a child in total silence? Because this monster is incredible at being able to hear from long distances. The title, A Quiet Place. If we were talking about, let's say, kind of a low budget rom-com called A Quiet Place, and it's about the place that they went to express love to each other or something like that, I would say that's not a really good title. But here, what it points to is the impossible situation they're in, right? Why this title points to that need for this kid and everybody else involved to be 100% silent. So the monster hunts by sound, eviscerates people in seconds. This is the right word for it, by the way. He eviscerates, or it eviscerates people. It just eats them up. They're gone. So the most important decisions that a horror writer makes. This is Emily Blunt in the bathtub. That by the way, that was a great decision, the way they did that. So we're talking about great horror writing here. This is what you want to be thinking up front is, my job is to create something amazing, not just to create something average or that. It's because you really can. This is a place where you as the writer can make the difference as to whether a movie ends up selling or not, and whether it becomes an insane success just based on the decisions. So second thing that's incredibly important is that you honor the audience that loves horror. And let me pause for a second. Horror, if you look at some of the movies that have come out, even in the last year, we've had a couple of horror movies hit the theater, not that much advertising, and yet they were completely sold out. And in the first week, they'd already done like 20 to $30 million worth of box office on that. Horror audiences, the real audiences, love horror. So if you're one of those people who's like me, who originally I didn't like horror at all, it was like, wow, I don't want to go in there and be scared. Please know this. I interviewed a whole bunch of horror people. I'm talking about horror audiences. And the ones who are horror, this is their genre, they go in to be scared just like everybody else goes to a rom-com to feel love, right? They want to feel terror. They want to have all the emotions that go with a great horror movie. So here's the biggest mistake that a lot of people do. They write a drama with horror elements, which now creates a problem. The people who are drama people don't really like the horror, and the people who are horror people want real horror. So honor the audience that loves the horror, really. Uh, if you do a great job, like if you look at this scene was not written for people who are hoping that everything's going to be okay and don't want to be scared. This scene was written for horror audiences, for the ones that love to go through that terror, the ones that love the moment where she stepped on the nail, and the monsters hovering behind her and all of this kind of thing. It's like they want to be terrorized, basically. So say yes. Give them real horror, again, not drama with horror elements. Honor the genre conventions of horror. Again, when I see the directors who do those low budget horror movies where they haven't honored conventions. They're trying to change everything because they weren't creative in the first place. They were hoping to get on the set and capture something amazing. What they needed was you. They needed a great horror writer that could save their movie. And we can do it. We really can. So let's look at the conventions. First thing, you terrorize the characters. Again, go back to that thing. The horror lovers are expecting this. So you're not writing to people who are hoping not to be scared. So you want to create an experience of horror for your audience by taking these characters to the point of hysteria. And let me say one more thing about this. The worst horror movie I ever saw, a director had done this thing where he had made a two-page outline of the scenes, and then he kept telling these actors to go to the point of hysteria, but there was nothing scary. And so it just almost looked like a bad comedy. Your job is to get them to that point and have the audience go there with you. That's what probably happened in this scene for you. Isolation. You wanna set this thing up in situations where the characters are alone and powerless against the monster. That's what we just saw. Death. You want to either threaten them with awful, violent, torturous deaths or cause the fear of death or insanity. Uh, and I've had people ask me, well, do we have to threaten them? Do we have to have death? And it's like, again, they just haven't yet embraced the horror, what a horror movie is. So start getting okay with it. If you're not. And along the way, you will. Uh, the monster. This should be a person or an entity that inflicts endless terror. And this was hard for me at the very beginning. I was like, really? Does it have to be that way? And I was kind of coming from the drama with horror elements mode. Uh, High tension, we need to put these characters in sinister situations that are out of their control and then turn up the heat to the point of hysteria. Uh, and again, we'll look at this scene in a moment. I think the beautiful thing that they did in this particular scene was they put her in a situation where there was no doubt there was hysteria going on, and she had to keep it under control, not just for herself, but for her baby. Uh, and then in horror, and I would encourage you to do a departure from reality. Uh, this is very different than some of the other genres. There are extreme location situations outside of daily life. Thrillers are part of our normal life, right? Where we're experiencing something that it's like, okay, that could happen. But horror movies are often a departure, especially, like in this case, I've never seen a monster like that. If you look at a lot of other horror movies that are really well done, sometimes it's the monster, sometimes it's the situation, sometimes it's the environment, but somewhere along the way they departed from reality. They stepped outside of that, like all the ghost horror movies. I feel like at different times I've talked to the dead, but I have never yet had that moment where a ghost comes in a room and starts knocking things down and all of that kind of thing, right? They're a departure from reality. So, and then there's a moral statement. You know, a lot of horror movies underneath all the horror have some kind of social message about what are acceptable values and what lines not to cross, right? Uh, and so, like if you go back to the early ones, I was talking with Sean Cunningham again about this, and he said when they did Friday the 13th, the very first one, basically the rule was everybody who had sex died. And this, if you think about this, this is back in like the what 70s or something like that. Uh, and they were just presenting what was moral and not moral back in that day. Uh, Seems our world has changed quite a bit, and that could be part of how you present what you're saying. You might have a message to deliver. You might have some kind of moral statement about how people behave or how they interact or how they take care of each other. That's up to you. You get to design that. And it won't be an obvious one quite like you see in a lot of dramas and that kind of thing. It'll be something that people just kind of get on a deeper level. So let's take a look at this movie or this script. Scene. And I'm sorry, by the way, I just watched this scene again. I finished it maybe 3 minutes before we got on here. And it's like, wow, I can't believe how well written it is and also how emotional and disturbing it is. So we'll start over here. We've got a setup. We've got a unique horror situation. It's like, how do you give birth while remaining completely silent? I went through 3 births with my daughters, and it's like, wow, I was incredibly impressed with my wife. I was like, oh my God. Uh, so the high stakes in this situation, the mother's life, the newborn's life, right? And really, this is kind of a torture scene. How could somebody possibly endure this amount of pain without making a sound? I didn't see any place in there where she got an epidural or took any kind of drugs for this. It's like she's being tortured in multiple ways. The emotion in the beginning here, it's major tension, right? If she makes a sound, she and the baby are dead. Now we're just starting at the very beginning. We go now to this. Her water breaks. That means the countdown has begun, right? And the emotion that comes with that is dread. She's got no choice. She's going to have this baby. And in this case, she's going to end up doing it alone, which I don't think was their plan. They made a lot of really intelligent decisions about what would happen if she wasn't alone, or if she was by herself. But I think they planned for him to be there. Now she's having contractions on the stairs. She can't even get down the stairs. She sits and breathes through it. We're feeling sympathy for her at that point. We haven't seen a monster yet, so it's just, it's like we're started with a little dread. Now we've gone to sympathy. Down the stairs, she steps on a nail, and we see the nail right before she steps on it. It's like, oh my God. She cries for a moment, pries her foot from the nail. First, we're in shock. We felt that. I felt it. My guess is you did too. We have heavy, heavy sympathy going on at this point. So it's like we are deeply emotionally connected to her and to everything that happens from this point because of that. Then she limps over to the wall, turns on the red light outside. So curiosity at that point, what's the plan? What's Lee going to do? Lee, her husband. At this point, the monster comes in upstairs, right? She finds a timer. What for? Again, we're feeling curiosity, but we're also feeling apprehension because the monster's upstairs. It's not there with her yet. We're on the way. Notice how these emotions are sequenced. Now the monster's at the top of the stairs. We're starting to feel impending doom. And that's something to worry about. She now has another contraction. She's breathing through it. We see blood on the floor. This is her suffering, and we're at least suffering a little bit with her. Uh, Outside, Lee sees the red lights. He runs towards the house. Now we've got a release. It's like, okay, he's coming to save the day. At least that's what we're hoping for. Suspense. Is he going to be there on time? The subtext of the red lights shows their preparation. So look at how all this is built. From there, now the monster comes downstairs, searching, listening. She stops breathing. It's close. She has another contraction. It's like there's heavy, heavy suspense. She's trapped, and we're feeling terror at that point. And my guess is she's absolutely feeling that terror. Then the timer goes off. The monster scrambles to get to it. Here's a diversion, and we're feeling relief for a moment. She runs up the stairs, escape, more relief. It's like, okay, maybe she's going to be okay. She silently lowers herself into a bathtub. She's bleeding. She's crying, trying to take control of the situation. This is an impossible situation. We feel that for her. Outside, Lee gives he gives his son some fireworks, instructions in sign language. The kid runs off at full speed. We have suspense. Is this going to be taken care of in time? And by the way, we also have curiosity. What's the use of the fireworks in that situation? The monster now comes up the stairs, really. Uh, he's now right behind the bathtub. We're feeling horror, and so is she. The fireworks are lit. There's 10 seconds. Basically, we're watching as the wick is being burnt, and there's suspense that's going on at that point. So she waits in terrible pain. We're feeling distress for her. The fireworks go off, and now for the first time, she can scream. There's a release. John comes down the stairs with a shotgun. He sees the bathtub. It's empty with her blood in it. So he's arrived, but it's too late. He thinks that she's dead, sits against the wall. He starts crying. We're feeling anguish at this point, which is the appropriate emotion for that. And then her bloody palm on the shower door. Turns out she's alive. Relief. Now, this, you go through all of this, and what we've got is this incredible scene that was written so well. And of course, yes, it was acted well and all those kinds of things, but all of that comes from the writing in the first place. Notice all the emotional journey that went with it. This is the kind of thing that you need to be able to write. You need to be able to create at this level. You absolutely can do it. Now, I'll show you how in a few minutes here. But I want you to consider the journey of the writers, right? They started with this unique horror, really, it started with a unique horror idea, which then turned into a horror script, and it caused this. A Quiet Place, the one we just talked about. Budget was 17 million, box office 341, written by Brian Woods and Scott Beck. And yes, John Krasinski went over the script. He gave them notes on the script. He worked with them on the script to make it much better than they were at writing at that point. These two guys were basically nobodies. Nobody knew them. Nobody knew what was going on. They had so many producers who wouldn't even look at their script at that point, but they ultimately got it to somebody who could help them. From there, then there's a second movie, A Quiet Place 2. Budget was 55 million. It made 297. And this, again, when you've got a great concept and great writing, this kind of thing is possible. In this case, John got a credit on this, and so did Brian and Scott. So now then, we go to A Quiet Place day one, budget 67 million, made 261. This is the prequel, essentially. Uh, and these two guys got credit for the characters and they got paid for that, right? So they had one great idea. They did an excellent job of creating it. They got somebody in there that helped them out and took them to a much higher level. And all of this came out of that. That's amazing. Wouldn't you like that for yours? But I want you to look where it went from there because there's more. Uh, they got hired to write a script called 65 with Adam Driver. That one had a $45 million budget. You may not have seen it, but they got credits for writing, directing, and producing. Now, why did they get all three of these credits at this level at a $45 million movie? It was because of the previous successes. So a big part of your journey is going to be getting that first horror script produced and having some kind of success, which gives you the ability to do the others. Let's take it a step further. Then they wrote The Boogeyman. Here again, executive producer and screenplay credits on a $35 million budget. Then a movie that just came out a year or two ago, Heretic, starring Hugh Grant, of all people. That's just astounding to me. Their budget was 10 million. They had a box office of 59 million. Now you might look at this and go, well, those are really low numbers when you compare them to the others. But again, this made 6 times its money. They're still in business. And because of that, A Quiet Place Part 3 is in pre-production right now. Now, again, take a look at all that came from somebody coming up with a great idea and doing ultimately what ended up being a great job of writing it. So consider the journey, which starts with your unique horror script. Horror basically is the easiest genre there is to break into. It really is. Partially because it's low budget, but also partially because, or a big part of it, because there's so much potential upside. You just got to be great at it. You know, I know that there are people that look at some of these horror movies and go, "Oh, that just looks so easy." And it's like, well, if you know what you're doing, if you're great at writing all of the components, yeah, it is. But for the most part, I'll tell you that there's hundreds and hundreds of horror movies done every year that you never see. And it's all by people who are writing something and just don't have the skill level that they need. So let me walk you through the skills that you really need and how to get them. So this is the upcoming class. I'm going to give you a special on it in a moment, but this could change your life again because horror really is probably one of the easiest genres there is to break into. It also is one of the easiest to be able to end up with something that has incredible success. So here are the skills that you need. First, you need to be able to create a strong concept and the conventions. That's lesson number one. And you will design your conventions at that point. Then it's about the monster and creating a unique monster, something that will terrify us, something that we will be so curious about, like they did here. And then the primal fears. You want to base your story around certain primal fears that you take to an extreme and that you design and set up really, really well. You will love what we do with that. Then it's about the survivors and the victims. Who's going to survive? Who is ultimately going to be a victim in that particular story? And from there, now we're going to build your plot. And let me say something here, because this is kind of important. when people try to write a story and then add horror to it, a lot of times they completely miss the things we're going to do. So you're essentially going to build your entire plot one step at a time, first starting with the horror situations, and you'll create it all the way across the whole story. You'll say, okay, what's the opening horror scene? And if you're writing horror, by the way, you need a great opening horror scene that intrigues us in a big way and has us want to see everything that's going to happen, right? What's the opening horror scene? What's the act one, the turning point horror scene? What's the midpoint horror scene? And then it starts to escalate. And where does it go from there? And what are the big scary as hell horror scenes you're going to build in? So you will brainstorm those up front. You'll lay them into your track all the way across your entire story. From there, you'll go to the character death track. Who do you kill, when, and why? And it's like most people think it's just, oh, you just pick a random character and do this with him. Well, you can do that. That's what they do in some of the bad ones. I think you need to be smart about it. You need to know what you're doing. You need to know how you're setting up the audience, how you are making a statement, how you are building our concerns, and who the ultimate character is that survives, right? Uh, then it's about the monster reveal track. Like in this one, again, in the opening scene, we didn't see the monster. What we heard a bunch of noise as it was running through the forest, and then we saw the kid just kind of disappear, and it's over, right? And it's like, oh my God, it's that fast. So we got at least a reveal into who this monster is. It can attack and kill based on sound in seconds, right? Now then from there, what do you do? How much do you reveal, when and why and where and all of that? You're going to build that all the way across your track so that it makes total sense. Then it'll be the character journey track. And I've heard people say horror characters don't have a journey. Listen, that's not true. Um, if you look at Scream, the very first one, it starts with Drew Barrymore. She's in the kitchen. She gets a call from the guy, who's asking her questions. They start talking about horror movies, and next thing you know, she ends up getting terrorized and finally killed out on the lawn, and her boyfriend's already dead out there, right? There was a journey that she went through, and the journey was meaningful. It delivered a whole bunch of different messages. Starting with, it told us that anybody could die. We just saw who we thought was the star of the movie die, right? And that means anybody can, which made it more dangerous, more scary. So that was the start of a really strong character journey track. From there, now we're going to go into the emotions. And we did something that is absolutely amazing here. This took us more time than anything when we were developing it. What we basically did was we looked at every horror emotion and we asked, how can we define it in a single sentence so you know exactly what you're doing? And it's not just these three. Here's horror emotions 2, and here's horror emotions 3. Every one of them, we've defined them in a single sentence, and then we gave you a one sentence how to. So, for instance, anguish. If you're not sure, how do you create anguish for an audience? As soon as you get to this lesson, you'll suddenly look at it and go, oh my God, I can do that easily. I can do that now. And so every one of these emotions, you'll become a pro at. And this will change how you write, and it'll change what you can accomplish. You'll be able to look at a scene and say, okay, I want to start that scene with suspense. I want to go from there to some shock, right? I want to come back to panic. I want to then move that straight to hysteria. And you will build the scene based on the emotional journey your audience takes. This is going to make you an incredible writer. From there, we give you 20 scares and creepy moments. This we're doing just so you don't end up doing the same scare over and over. You will always have other possibilities. And then we take you into the scary as hell horror scene. Today, I showed you what one looked like, and we mainly worked with the emotions. But I didn't give you the model for how to create this. Once you learn this model, you'll go back to your script. You'll identify what are the 5 to 7 scenes that you want to be scary as hell. When they are scary as hell, people remember them from that point on. This scene we just saw, that was memorable. And you're going to become a master at writing this. This is one of the things I've had people come back to me over and over. I'm talking writers who have had their horror movies produced and say a big part of it was they had these 5 scenes that the producer just went, oh my God, this writer's incredible. And really, this will change your life as a horror writer. Then it's about how do you turn up the heat? And finally, how do you keep it low budget and marketable? You will learn all of this it's a 30-day class. You'll learn all of it in 30 days. You will apply every single lesson as you go through to your project. By the time you're done, you will have the best script you've ever written in your lifetime. It will be the most well-designed. It will be perfectly designed for this industry, for the horror lovers, to be something that could be released in a theater. So if you want to have that experience, just come join us. Let me give you a special here. Normal price on this class is $199. We're just about a month out. That gives you a month to brainstorm ideas. We will send you, as soon as you sign up, we will send you a lesson, a pre-lesson on how to brainstorm your ideas. There's 3 key things you want to look for. You'll master them almost immediately. So you can start brainstorming ideas, come into the class with the best of those ideas, the one that has the best chance, and take it through the whole thing. The special, this is for the first 10 writers, is $129. And all you have to do to get that, just write down this link right here. That'll save you $70, $129 for the first 10, bit.ly, bit.ly/horror sign up. Write that down, put it in your browser where you normally put a web address, click return, and sign up and join us. The first 10 get it at $129. After that, I think it goes up to $159. That's for the next 10, and then after that to $199. Even if you end up paying full price, I promise you, this class will change how you write. It will make you so much more skilled. You'll become a master at horror, but it also will give you things that you will apply to other genres. Once you understand this whole thing about the emotions, you'll be able to go into your other genres and say, wow, I had this whole scene set up and it really only creates one emotion. What if I created an emotional sequence the way I learned to do it in the horror class? It will change things for you. So come join us. I promise you, you will love what this class does for you, and it will give you a much, much better chance of succeeding both at winning contests and at getting deals with producers. And maybe you'll be one of those writers that ends up actually having the kind of success you've always wanted. That's our objective, and I can't wait to hear about your movie when it comes out. So with that, again, all you got to do is just write this link down, put it in the browser, and come join us. With that, this is Hal Crosman wishing you the absolute best in your writing. Good talking with you guys. Bye-bye, everyone.